Welcome to 78 episode 780. There we go. Of Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm going to be talking about the author Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show, along with links to social media, ways to listen to the show, and ways to support the show at the podcast website. And that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is always appreciated but never expected, as there are expenses in making these shows. I think I had that backwards, but still works, I guess. Also, please check out the links in every episode description to friends of the show. Jen, the Arcane Observer, and her channel, as well as Michael Strange and Trouble Minds Radio, both the show and the online radio station. Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP, digital broadcasting, which you can listen to 24/7 and hear shows from Mike and myself and Jen and many others as well. So, and that's available 24/7 and a great place to just go and listen to things and not have to bother with playlists or podcast feeds or anything like that. So this episode, I started recording already a read through of the books, the nonfiction books of Charles Fort, and I realized today that I didn't really do a show about him, just the person. Also, you all may not hear anything at all, but I have fireworks going on behind me. Also, some sirens just now. So apparently, there's all kinds of stuff going on in town where I live tonight. But anyway, so I realized I should probably do a show just on the author of the books that I'm reading before I really start putting out shows where I read all those books for the show or on the show. So, and those shows will come out for those that were here for the live stream. Those will come out over time. It's going to be a little while. So, but anyway, so I thought that since we are doing very good, thank you, sweets. Since we are going to be reading all of his nonfiction books, I should at least give a little bit of a summary on the author himself. So let's see here. Let me find the document that I found online. So Charles Fort was born in Albany, New York in 1874, I believe, if I'm reading this right. His father was in the grocery industry, and Fort had an unpublished autobiography, and Fort mentioned that life was not the best with his family. So, but let me see here. Looking at the rest of this biography here, as a young adult, Charles Fort wanted to go into sciences, to be a naturalist, collecting seashells and minerals and I guess birds. I don't know if I mean just pictures of them or what he means exactly. What it means there exactly, but so he was curious and intelligent, but he was not the best student. So, but he was most of his knowledge that he got that he gained over time was through reading. He did a lot of reading. When he was 18, Fort went on a world tour to just travel the world, and he went through the Western U.S. and Scotland and England, and even went to Africa, where he became ill for a time. When he got back home, he was nursed back to health by a childhood friend, Anna Filling, and they eventually, this led to them being married. And so for a few years, they lived in poverty in the Bronx while Fort tried to earn a living writing stories for newspapers and magazines, focused on accounts. I'm sorry. And then in 1906, he started to collect reports of anomalies, which is what he is probably most well known for at this point. So he became a full-time writer. Uh, uh, at one point, he did get a modest inheritance from his uncle who passed away in 1916, and that gave him enough money to quit his various day jobs to write full time. So, and then he got another small inheritance later on. He was a journalist for a time, and he also he so he got into writing, and that's when he started to look into all the reports of anomalous things and started to become very skeptical of the scientific community and the tendency of journalists and editors of newspapers to be also very skeptical, to the point where to him things did not make sense. He did write novels, but only one was published, and he so he wrote a couple of books that were basically science fiction, and these books were called X and Y. And the idea behind these books was that there was a civilization on Mars that was controlling everything going on Earth. And then, so these books, and then there was other topics as well. There was these books got the attention of another writer, Theodore Dreiser, who tried to get them published, but it didn't work. But and so not long after that, he started writing his nonfiction, and the first of these books became the Book of the Damned, which was is the one that we started reading in previous shows that will come out after the show, thanks to the way things work sometimes with podcasts. And this came out in 1919, and this book, of course, as the book talks about in the beginning, this is all about data, information, reports of anomalies that science could not accept or account for. And so any rejected data was all of that rejected data of reports was called damned data by Fort in that book. Excuse me. So the Fort and his wife went back and forth between the U.S. and England, and Fort continued researching all these anomalies, and he wrote some more books on the topic, and his books, the Book of the Damned, and then the three that came after are what are really huge in that they a lot of people over time have referred to them over and over again, because they were some of the first books, I think, in the modern day covering anomalies, as far as reports of them in scientific journals, and Fort eventually got a following. There was talk of a formal organization at one point because of all this. uh, and the idea of it was to study the types of events that Fort talked about in his books, and these anomalous falls of objects from the sky, and so that's there was eventually, I think, either one or two different foundations or organizations that came about after his writing, that were sort of dedicated to his ideas and his ways of thinking about these anomalies. So uh, Fort did eventually die due to poor health uh, and not wanting to seek medical help, and so but he was able to finish the last of his four books, which we will get to, Wild Talents, and before he passed away in 1932, and the day he actually was rushed to the hospital, Fort's publisher visited him to show him the advanced copies of Wild Talents, and Fort died that same day on May 3rd, 1932, and so he was interred in the Fort family plot in Albany, New York. So, so as far as Fort's works on the unexplained and paranormal and all these things, Fort went to libraries all around New York City and London, and just to examine all kinds of scientific journals and newspapers and magazines, gathering notes on anomalies that were not explained well, in his opinion, by the accepted scientific theories and beliefs of scientists at the time. And it says here in this article that I'm reading, Fort took just a ton of notes in his lifetime, and he this is what led to the books that he wrote. And he Fort often mentioned having toyed with the idea of burning a collection of some 48,000 notes, and he even let some notes get blown away by the wind because he couldn't be bothered to save them, even though they were supposedly returned to him at a later point. But the notes were actually kept on cards and scraps of paper in shoe boxes. Keep in mind, this is early 1900s. There were no computers at this point. And so Fort did destroy many of his notes, but started gathering new ones again. And even with all that going on, he still managed to put out 4 books on these topics. And many of these notes, most of these notes were donated to the New York Public Library, where they're still around. That'd be amazing to go and look at those. So there's also other material Forts that survived as part of the papers of his friend Theodore Dressel, that is held at the University of Pennsylvania. And so the 4 nonfiction books that Fort wrote were The Book of the Damned in 1919. These these were published. New Lands, 1923. Low, that's LO, exclamation mark, 1931. And Wild Talents in 1932. And there was another book that was written between New Lands and Low, but it was absorbed into Low. So this is the way writing works sometimes. You start projects and you think it's going to be one thing and it ends up being part of another. And I know that from experience. Sometimes that just happens. So when it so Fort believed that there was this this place called the Super Sargasso Sea, which is where all lost things go, and he thought this was sort of out there above the surface of the planet, and but this is the theory he put out. As to whether he believed it or not, for sure, no one really knows. He noted that he believes nothing of his own that he has ever written. So there's also people that that have admired his writing style, and again, if once you hear the other shows I've done the reading, he has a very very interesting style when he writes, and he can go on for a whole paragraph with one or two sentences. So, which is also quite the challenge to read. But after that, so examples of what Fort talked about in his books. This includes again things falling from the sky, and tales of human combustion, portals, disappearances, poltergeist events, unidentified flying objects. Again, this is before any kind of modern airplanes were around, and of course, this inspired a whole sort of idea or a way of thinking about all these things that people look into these things are called Forteans, Fortans, and these are people that again look into all these kinds of anomalous events in similar ways to what Fort did in his time. So there was, and again, as I mentioned, there was at one point a group called the Fortean Society, and it was created in 1931 by some of Fort's friends, and he was invited to be part of the group, and he didn't really want to, but he eventually sort of did join when they had meetings or meals together, and so yeah, so that's basically it as far as Fort goes. He's influenced a lot of people, not just in the research of all these topics, but other researchers as well, including Lauren Coleman, who is a well-known cryptozoological investigator, cryptozoologist looking into creatures. And let's see here, trying to find out who else here. Also, just writers, other writers that wrote fiction of later on apparently referred to Fort. And some of these writers include Philip K. Dick, Robert Heinlein, Robert Anton Wilson, and let's see here. So yeah, a lot of people that now there's another author also that I want to get into at some point, that sort of continued this research into all these reports of anomalous events. His name is William R. Corliss, who has also put out many books and notes about similar events to what Fort wrote about. So it's another writer I want to look into at some point. Probably after I finish the books on finish excuse me, finish reading Fort's books. I'll try to find some from Corliss. So yeah, that's basically it. There's other writers that came later much later that I want to sort of not really review their individual books because they all have so many, but just do shows on in general regarding some of their ideas and theories. John Keel, of course, most people know him as being connected to the whole the Mothman of Point Pleasant and that whole series of events that also involved UFOs and Men in Black and, of course, the bridge that collapsed there. But also Jacques Vallée, who's a huge influence on the whole UFO research field. Also Hans Holzer, who is a paranormal investigator, and he has many books out as well. And then also this William Corliss. I haven't looked into any of. I haven't actually read any of his books yet, but I want to. I just have to find audio versions at some point. But yeah. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the research that I do, a lot of the research that's been done over the years by other pretty famous writers and authors. It does build on the work of Charles Fort and others as well, but yeah. So I don't know. Things would definitely be different without his work, and we'll be getting into those 4 books. And like I said, they deal with all kinds of things. A lot of people, when if they do know of Fort, they mainly know of his reports of things just falling from the sky. But again, there's a lot to that in and of itself, with stones falling, stones that are even like carved or shaped. There's reports of course, frogs and fish falling, but there's also he covers disappearances, what appear to be teleportation. So he covers a lot of things within the 4 books that we'll be reading in the show over time, and it's going to be an ongoing series. And so yeah, that's yeah, Hans Holzer. Yeah, Hans Holzer has a lot of amazing books. If you ever want to go into a whole rabbit hole of reading, I definitely recommend his stuff. And like I said, I'll be doing a review show on him at some point as well. So, just because the thing with him that I find fascinating is he looked into haunted places, places that were said to be haunted, but he didn't go about it with technology the way that a lot of people do now. He went What he did instead was he got people that seemed to have psychic or medium like abilities to um, be in contact with spirits or other consciousness or other energies, and he would make sure he took someone like that with him to every investigation he did whenever possible. And that was the only thing and then like an audio recorder to take down a recording of what happened. That was how he investigated places that were said to be haunted. And he got a lot of evidence from a lot of places using that method. So anyway, we'll get into that in another show. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.